My daughter left me alone on Christmas claiming her mill was sick, then I caught them in Hawaii. One message, instant regret. The city of Virith hummed with a restless pulse, its spires of glass and steel clawing at a sky bruised with the threat of rain. Beneath the towering monoliths, Elias Varn trudged through the neon-lit streets, his coat collar turned up against the damp chill. At 27, Elias carried the weight of unspoken dreams in his hazel eyes, their glint dulled by years of routine. A junior archivist at the sprawling Nexus repository, he spent his days cataloging fragments of a world long forgotten, texts, artifacts, whispers of a time before the city's iron grip. Yet, within him stirred a quiet hunger, a yearning for something beyond the endless scroll of data and the hum of machinery. Elias's apartment, a cramped cube on the 43rd floor of a decaying tenement, was a shrine to his private rebellion. Shelves groaned under the weight of contraband books, paper relics banned by the council for their disruptive ideas. As he sank into a threadbare chair, his fingers traced the spine of a poetry volume, its words a fleeting escape from Viritha's suffocating order. What am I even chasing? He wondered, his thoughts a tangle of defiance and doubt. The city demanded conformity, but Elias's heart thrummed with questions he dared not voice. His reverie shattered when the door chimed, a sharp, insistent sound. Mira Cade stood in the hallway, her dark curls framing a face alight with urgency. Mira, his childhood friend and a courier for the city's underground network, was a spark in Viritha's gray haze. Her green eyes, sharp as cut jade, held secrets Elias could never quite unravel. You're brooding again, she teased, slipping inside without invitation. Those books will get you exiled, you know. Elias smirked, but his pulse quickened. What's got you sneaking around at this hour, Mira? Another delivery, his tone was light, but suspicion curled in his gut. Myra's work for the Resistance was no secret to him, though she rarely shared details. Her loyalty to the cause sometimes felt like a wall between them, one he couldn't scale. She leaned against the wall, her casual stance belying the tension in her voice. Something's happening, Elias. Something big. I need you to trust me, her words hung heavy, and for a moment, the air seemed to thicken. Elias's mind raced, trust was a currency he spent sparingly, even with Mira. What's she hiding this time? Before he could press her, a low rumble shook the building. The lights flickered, and a distant explosion echoed through the city's canyons. Elias rushed to the window, his breath catching as plumes of smoke rose from the Nexus Repositories district. Myra's hand gripped his arm, her voice low. That's no accident. The council's hiding something, and someone just blew the lid off. The Nexus Repository was Viritha's heart, a fortress of knowledge guarded by the council's iron decrees. Its archives held secrets the city's rulers deemed too dangerous for the public, truths about the world before the Great Collapse, a cataclysm that had reshaped society centuries ago. Elias's work there, though mundane, had given him glimpses of those forbidden fragments, references to lost technologies, cryptic prophecies, and a name that haunted him, the Unseen. The term appeared in scattered texts, always redacted, always cloaked in mystery. We need to move, Mira urged, her eyes darting to the door. If the repositories hit, they'll lock down the city. You're not safe here. Elias's mind spun. Safe? When have I ever been safe? The council's surveillance drones patrolled every corner of Virith, their lenses glinting like predatory eyes. To flee with Mira meant abandoning his quiet life, his fragile sanctuary of books and secrets. But to stay meant risking interrogation, or worse. The explosion wasn't just a disruption, it was a gauntlet thrown at his feet. Why me? He demanded, his voice raw. I'm nobody, Mira. An archivist. What do you need me for? Her gaze softened, but her words cut deep. Because you've seen things, Elias. Things you weren't supposed to. The council knows you've been poking around in the archives. And now, someone's made a move they can't ignore. His stomach twisted. The Unseen. Had his late-night searches, his covert scans of restricted files, been traced? The thought sent a chill down his spine. He'd always known his curiosity was a blade, sharp enough to cut him. But Myra's urgency, the smoke curling over the skyline, it was real, immediate, undeniable. "Pack what you need," she said, her voice steady now. "We're going to the Underdistrict. There's someone you need to meet." The Underdistrict was Viritha's shadow, a labyrinth of tunnels and forgotten slums where the council's reach weakened. It was the Resistance's stronghold, a place Elias had only heard of in whispers. His heart pounded as he stuffed a bag with essentials, a few books, a battered journal, a knife he'd never used. Am I really doing this? The question gnawed at him, but the alternative, waiting for the council's enforcers to knock, was no choice at all. As they slipped into the night, the city seemed to pulse with menace. Drones whirred overhead, their red lights slicing through the fog. Elias's thoughts churned, a storm of fear and exhilaration. What have I stumbled into? Mira moved with purpose, her silence a shield he couldn't pierce. The explosion at the repository wasn't just an attack, it was a signal, a spark that could ignite Viritha's fragile order. In the distance, sirens wailed, a lament for the life Elias was leaving behind. He glanced at Mira, her profile sharp against the neon glow. "No turning back, is there?" he murmured. She met his gaze, her eyes fierce. "Not for you. Not anymore." Deep within him, something stirred, a flicker of defiance, a hunger for answers. The unseen, whatever it was, had called his name. And Elias Varn, for the first time in years, felt the pull of a purpose he couldn't ignore. The Underdistrict swallowed Elias Varn like a beast gulping down prey, its tunnels a maze of dripping pipes and flickering lights. The air was thick with the stench of rust and rebellion, a far cry from Viritha's sterile streets above. Elias's boots scraped against the uneven stone as he trailed Miracade, her silhouette a beacon in the gloom. His bag, heavy with books and secrets, dug into his shoulder, a reminder of the life he'd abandoned. Ascended to the Underdistrict's shadows. What am I doing here? Elias thought, his heart a drumbeat of doubt. The explosion at the Nexus repository had shattered his world, and now, every step deeper into this underworld felt like a plunge into an abyss. Mira moved with the grace of someone who'd navigated these paths 100 times, her silence louder than the distant hum of machinery. Elias's mind churned, replaying her cryptic words from the night before. "You've seen things you weren't supposed to." The unseen, that elusive specter from the archives, haunted his thoughts. Was it a myth? A weapon? A truth the council buried? Each question was a thorn, pricking at his resolve. "I'm not a hero," he thought, gripping his bag tighter. "I'm just a man who read too much." They reached a rusted door guarded by a hulking figure with eyes like chipped flint. Mira whispered a code, and the door groaned open, revealing a cavernous chamber lit by jury-rigged lamps. The space buzzed with activity, figures hunched over crates, murmuring in low tones, their faces etched with defiance. Elias felt like an intruder, a scholar among warriors. Do they know I'm here to save myself, not their cause? The thought burned, but he shoved it down, his gaze darting to Mira. She was already striding toward a man at the room's heart, his presence commanding despite his unassuming frame. "This is Torin," Mira said, her voice clipped. Torin's eyes, sharp and gray as storm clouds, assessed Elias like a blade weighing a cut. His hair was streaked with silver, his hands scarred from battles Elias could only imagine. "He leads the Shattered Veil," Mira added, her tone reverent. Elias's throat tightened. The Shattered Veil, the resistance group whispered about in Viritha's shadows, blamed for every glitch in the city's order. And I'm standing in their lair. He forced a nod, his voice unsteady. "I'm Elias. I don't know why I'm here." Torin's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "You're here because you've stirred a hornet's nest, Varn. The council's got your name, and they don't forgive curiosity." His voice was gravel, each word deliberate. "You've been digging into the unseen. Tell me what you know." Elias's pulse spiked. How does he know? His late-night scans of restricted archives, fragments about the unseen, redacted and cryptic, felt like a noose tightening. "I don't know anything," he said, his voice sharper than intended. "Just pieces." Mentions of something called the unseen in old texts. It's tied to the Great Collapse, but the council scrubbed it clean. I thought it was a story. Torin leaned closer, his gaze unyielding. It's no story. It's a spark that could burn Virith to ash. And someone, maybe you, maybe not, lit a match at the repository. Elias's stomach lurched. The explosion hadn't just been an attack, it was a message, and he was caught in its echo. I'm not ready for this. But Torin's words left no room for retreat. The Shattered Veil believed the unseen was real, and they thought Elias held a key. His hands trembled as he set his bag down, the weight of his books grounding him. I wanted answers, not a war. Mira stepped forward, her voice softer now. Elias, you're not alone in this. But you need to decide, help us, or run. Running won't save you. Her words stung, peeling back his fear. She's always known me better than I know myself. He wanted to lash out, to demand why she dragged him into this, but her eyes held a plea he couldn't ignore. She's risking everything for this. For me? The thought was a shard of glass in his chest. Before he could answer, a young woman burst into the chamber, her breath ragged. Torin, they're coming. Council and Forbkers. They've cracked one of our relays. We've got minutes. The room erupted into chaos, orders barked, weapons grabbed, lights dimmed. Elias froze, his mind screaming. They found us already? The Council's enforcers were relentless, their tech augmented with neural implants that made them more machine than man. Mira grabbed his arm, her grip fierce. Move, Elias. We're not dying here. Torin's voice cut through the din. Varn, you're with me. We need what's in your head. He tossed Elias a calm device, its weight foreign in his hand. Don't make me regret this. The group split, vanishing into tunnels like rats fleeing a flood. Elias stumbled after Torin, his thoughts a whirlwind. What's in my head? I'm nobody. But the Council's pursuit suggested otherwise. Had his searches triggered an alarm? Or was there something he'd seen, something he didn't yet understand? The tunnel narrowed, the air growing colder. Torin's pace was relentless, his silence heavier than the stone around them. Elias's legs burned, his mind racing. If I run, I'm dead. If I stay, I'm theirs. The Shattered Veil wasn't just fighting for freedom, they were chasing a truth that could rewrite Virith's history. And Elias, whether he liked it or not, was part of it. They emerged into a smaller chamber, its walls lined with salvaged tech, screens, wires, a hum of defiance. Torin rounded on him, his voice low. The unseen isn't a thing, Varn. It's a signal. A code buried in the collapse's ruins. The Council's kept it locked away, but someone's waking it up. That explosion? It was a test. Elias's breath hitched. A signal? His mind flashed to a fragment he'd found, an archive entry about a pulse that could unmake order. He dismissed it as metaphor. Now, it felt like a bomb ticking in his skull. Why me? He whispered, his voice breaking. I'm just an archivist. Torin's eyes darkened. Because you saw it. And because someone in the Veil betrayed us. They told the Council you're a threat. The words landed like a blow. A traitor? Elias's gaze darted to the shadows, paranoia clawing at him. Mira? Torin? Someone else? His world tilted, trust crumbling like ash. I'm a pawn in a game I don't understand. A distant boom shook the tunnel, dust raining down. Torin grabbed a rifle, his voice steel. Time's up. You're either with us or you're dead. Choose. Elias's heart thundered, his hands shaking. I wanted truth, not this. But the Council's hounds were closing in, and the unseen's shadow loomed larger than ever. He clutched the calm device, its weight a lifeline. I'm in, he said, the words tasting like blood. Torin nodded, but his eyes held no warmth. Good. Because the Veil's got plans for you, Varn. And they don't include mercy. As shouts echoed down the tunnel, Elias realized there was no going back. The unseen was no longer a question, it was a fire, and he was caught in its blaze. Dust clung to Elias Varn's skin as he crouched in the shadowed belly of the Underdistrict, the air sharp with the tang of ozone and fear. The council's enforcers had come too close, their neural-augmented boots echoing like death knells in the tunnels behind. Torin's gambit, a decoy collapse to slow the hunters, had bought them moments, but safety was a lie Elias no longer believed in. His fingers tightened around the comm device, its faint pulse a tether to a cause he barely understood. I said I'm in, he thought, his chest tight with the weight of his choice. But what am I becoming? Torin led their ragged group deeper into the maze, his gray eyes scanning every shadow. Mira flanked Elias, her silence a blade that cut deeper than words. The betrayal Torin had revealed, a traitor within the shattered veil, gnawed at Elias's mind like a parasite. Who? His gaze flicked to Mira, her jaw set, her hands steady. Could she? The thought was a betrayal of its own, but trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. The unseen, that elusive signal Torin claimed could unravel Viritha's order, was no longer a distant riddle. It was a storm, and Elias was its unwilling eye. They reached a sunken chamber, its walls scarred with graffiti, defiant scrawls of hope and rage. A handful of Veil fighters awaited, their faces gaunt but resolute. Among them was Lyra, a wiry hacker with ink-stained fingers and eyes that burned like embers. She'd been the one to warn of the enforcers, her relays catching the council's encrypted chatter. You're late, she snapped at Torin, her voice a whip crack. And you brought the bookworm. Elias bristled, his pride stinging. Bookworm. The word was a barb, but it wasn't wrong. His life had been paper and ink, not blood and steel. Yet here he was, marked by the council, hunted for secrets he didn't fully grasp. I'm more than that now, he told himself, but the lie tasted hollow. He straightened, meeting Lyra's gaze. I'm here. That's what matters. Lyra's lips curled, skeptical. We'll see, she turned to a makeshift console, its screens flickering with streams of code. The council's tightening the noose. They're not just after you, Varn. They're after the signal. Torin's voice was low, urgent. Show him. Lyra's fingers danced across the console, pulling up a grainy feed. It was a recording from the repository's ruins, captured hours after the explosion. Amid the wreckage, a faint pulse rippled, visible only in the infrared spectrum, a ghostly wave that seemed to hum with intent. Elias's breath caught. The unseen. His mind flashed to the archive fragment, a pulse to unmake order. This was no metaphor. It was real, alive, and the council was terrified of it. It's waking, Lyra said, her voice tinged with awe. The explosion triggered something. A relay, maybe, or a buried node from before the collapse. But it's incomplete. We need the key. Elias's stomach twisted. And you think I have it? His voice cracked, betraying the fear he tried to bury. I'm an archivist, not a savior. But Torin's gaze was unyielding, and Myra's silence screamed louder than any accusation. They believed he'd seen something in the archives, a code, a map, a truth that could unlock the unseen's power. What if they're wrong? The thought was a cold fist around his heart. Torin stepped closer, his scarred hands clenched. You're not here by chance, Varn. The traitor sold you out because you're a threat. That means you know more than you think. Elias's mind raced, sifting through memories of late-night scans. There had been a file, a locked data block labeled Echelon Protocol. He'd skimmed it, assuming it was another council redaction. But its metadata had mentioned a signal nexus, a term that now burned in his thoughts. Was that it? He opened his mouth to speak, but a sharp crack split the air, a gunshot, too close. The chamber erupted. Veil fighters scrambled for cover as enforcers breached the tunnel, their visors glowing like predators' eyes. Elias dove behind a crate, his pulse hammering. They found us. Mira was at his side, a pistol in her hand, her face a mask of fury. Stay down, she hissed, but her voice trembled. She's scared too. Torin roared orders, his rifle spitting fire. Lyra's console sparked as a stray shot hit it, the feed of the unseen's pulse winking out. Elias's heart sank. We're losing everything. But amid the chaos, a new thought struck him, a reckless, desperate spark. The Echelon Protocol. If it was the key, he couldn't let it die here. He crawled toward Lyra, dodging debris, his hands shaking as he reached her. Tell me you backed up the data, he shouted over the gunfire. Lyra's eyes were wild, but she nodded. On my drive. Why? There's a file, Echelon Protocol. I saw it in the archives. It might be what you need, his voice was steady, surprising even himself. I'm not running anymore. Lyra shoved a small drive into his hand, her grip fierce. Don't lose it. And don't die, she turned back to her console, her fingers flying to salvage what she could. The enforcers pressed closer, their voices mechanical, devoid of mercy. Elias clutched the drive, its weight heavier than his books ever were. This is my fight now. But the chamber was a slaughterhouse, and the Veil was outnumbered. Torin fell back, blood seeping from a gash on his arm, his face grim. We're leaving, he growled. Varn, with me. Mira grabbed Elias's arm, her touch electric. You're not giving up, are you? Her voice was raw, pleading. She needs me to be more than I am. No, Elias said, the word of vow. But I need to know why you trust me. After everything. Her eyes softened, but the truth stayed locked behind them. Because I've always known you'd fight, Elias. Even when you didn't. The words hit harder than the gunfire. She's seen something in me I never did. But there was no time to unravel it. Torin led them through a hidden passage, the sounds of battle fading behind. The tunnel was a throat, swallowing them whole, and Elias's thoughts were a storm. The Echelon Protocol. The unseen. A traitor. Each piece was a blade, and he was bleeding from them all. They emerged into a flooded cistern, its water black as ink. Torin's voice was a blade of its own. We've got one shot, Varn. That drive, if it's what you say, it changes everything. But the Council's not the only one hunting us now. Elias's blood ran cold. The traitor? Torin's nod was grim. They're closer than you think. The cistern's walls seemed to close in, the air thick with betrayal's stench. Elias's hand tightened around the drive, his resolve hardening. I'm not just an archivist anymore. The unseen was calling, and he would answer, no matter the cost. The cistern's black water lapped at Elias Varn's boots, each ripple a whisper of the chaos he'd barely escaped. The air was heavy, thick with mildew and the metallic tang of dread. Lyra's data drive burned in his pocket, its weight a chain tethering him to a truth he couldn't yet grasp. The Echelon Protocol, a key to the unseen signal that could either save Virith or shatter it. Torin's warning about the traitor echoed in his skull, a venom seeping into every thought. They're closer than you think. Elias's gaze darted to Mira, her silhouette sharp against the cistern's dim glow, and shame clawed at him for suspecting her. But who else? The shattered Veil was a house of fractured trust, and he was its newest, most fragile piece. Torin led the way, his wounded arm slowing him but not his resolve. The group, Elias, Mira, Lyra, and a handful of Veil survivors, moved like ghosts through the Underdistrict's veins, their footsteps muffled by the damp stone. Elias's chest ached with each breath, his mind a battlefield of doubt and defiance. I'm not built for this, he thought, his fingers brushing the drive. But I can't stop now. The unseen wasn't just a signal, it was a mirror, reflecting the parts of himself he'd buried, curiosity, courage, rage. I've been hiding my whole life. No more. The tunnel opened into a derelict platform, once a subway hub, now a graveyard of rusted rails and broken dreams. Lyra knelt by a salvaged terminal, her hands trembling as she plugged in the drive. If this Echelon thing is real, she muttered, it's our last shot. The Council's locking down the Underdistrict. We're running out of places to hide. Elias's stomach churned. No place to run. The council's enforcers were a tide, relentless and cold, their neural implants stripping away humanity for efficiency. He glanced at Mira, her pistol drawn, her eyes scanning the shadows. She's always been the brave one. But her silence since the sister gnawed at him, a void where their old ease used to live. What aren't you telling me? Torin's voice cut through the tension, low and urgent. Lyra, talk to me. What's on that drive? Her screen flickered, casting her face in ghostly light. It's a blueprint. The Echelon protocol isn't just a file, it's a sequence to activate a network. Pre-collapse tech, buried under Virith. The unseen signal is part of it, but it needs a catalyst. A specific node, hidden somewhere in the city. Elias's heart stuttered. A node. His mind flashed to an archive map he'd glimpsed, cryptic coordinates in the repository's depths, marked with a symbol that haunted him, a spiral, like the unseen's pulse. I've seen something, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. A map. It might lead to the node. Torin's eyes narrowed, assessing. You're sure? No, Elias admitted, the honesty bitter. But it's all I've got and it's more than I had yesterday. The admission was a spark, igniting something reckless in him. He wasn't just running anymore, he was chasing. Myra's hand grazed his arm, her touch fleeting but electric. You're doing this, aren't you? Her voice was soft, but it carried a weight that pinned him. She sees me. Really sees me. But the flicker of doubt in her eyes, new, raw, cut deeper than he expected. Before he could answer, Lyra's terminal screeched, a red alert flashing. They've cracked our decoy, she hissed. Enforcers, 2 minutes out. They're tracking us. Panic surged, but Torin's voice was steel. We move. Varn, you and Lyra head for the node. Mira, with me. We'll draw them off. Elias's throat tightened. Split up. The idea was a blade, slicing through the fragile unity they'd clung to. He grabbed Myra's wrist, his voice low. Don't do this. We stay together. Her eyes met his, fierce and fractured. We can't. You've got the map in your head, Elias. You're the one they need, she pulled free, her fingers lingering on his. Don't let me down. The words were a wound, bleeding trust and fear. She's giving me everything. But the traitor's shadow loomed, and Elias couldn't shake the dread that this was a trap, not from Mira, but from someone watching, waiting. I have to trust her. I have to. Lyra yanked him toward a side tunnel, her voice sharp. Move, bookworm. We're not dying for your feelings, Elias stumbled after her, the drive in his pocket a burning coal. The platform faded behind them, Torin and Mira vanishing into the dark. Stay alive, he thought, a prayer to no one. The tunnel was a labyrinth, its walls etched with faded warnings from a world long gone. Lyra's pace was relentless, her breath ragged. You better be right about this map, she said, her voice laced with desperation. If we're chasing ghosts, we're dead. Elias's mind churned, piecing together the archive's fragments. The spiral symbol, the coordinates, they pointed to the old quarter, a ruined district sealed off by the council. It's there. It has to be. But doubt was a tide, pulling at his resolve. What if I'm wrong? What if I lead us to nothing? They reached a collapsed stairwell, its steps leading to a sealed hatch. Lyra's tools sparked as she worked the lock, her curses a rhythm of defiance. Elias's thoughts spiraled, the traitor's specter clawing at him. Who sold me out? Torin's scars, Myra's secrets, Lyra's sharp edges, each was a suspect, each a blade poised to strike. The hatch groaned open, revealing a cavernous chamber lit by bioluminescent moss. At its center stood a monolith, ancient and humming, its surface carved with the spiral symbol. Elias's breath caught. The node. It was real, pulsing with the unseen's promise. But before he could move, Lyra's hand clamped on his arm, her voice a whisper. We're not alone. A figure stepped from the shadows, cloaked in council black, their face obscured by a visor. You've gone far enough, Varn, they said, their voice distorted but chillingly familiar. Elias's heart stopped. No, he knew that cadence beneath the mask. It wasn't Mira, not Torin, but someone he'd trusted, someone who'd stood beside him in the veil. Lyra's pistol trembled in her hand, but the figure raised a device, its light blinding. The Echelon protocol is ours, they said. And you're out of time. Elias's world crumbled, betrayal a knife in his gut. Not you. The monolith hummed louder, its pulse a heartbeat of dread. He clutched the drive, his resolve a fragile flame. I won't let it end here. But the figure's device whirred, and the chamber seemed to close in, a tomb for his fragile hope. The monolith's pulse thrummed in Elias Varn's bones, a primal rhythm that drowned out the scream of betrayal in his heart. The cloaked figure's visor glinted in the bioluminescent glow, their distorted voice, once so familiar, now a blade twisting in his gut. Lyra's pistol wavered, her breath a hiss of defiance, but the figure's device hummed with menace, its light a guillotine poised to fall. The Echelon protocol, the unseen's key, burned in Elias's pocket, a fragile hope against the tide of despair. Not you, he thought, his mind clawing at the traitor's identity. Not after everything. The old quarter's cavern was a crucible, and Elias stood at its heart, forged or broken by the choice he made now. The figure stepped closer, their voice a venomous purr. Hand over the drive, Varn. The council will bury the unseen, and you with it, the words were a lash, but beneath them, Elias caught a tremor, doubt, or something deeper. They're not as certain as they sound. His fingers tightened around the drive, its edges biting into his palm. This is all I have left. The monolith's spiral symbol seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, whispering of a world beyond Viritha's chains. I'm not done yet. Lyra's eyes flicked to him, wild with fear and fury. Elias, do something, her voice cracked, a plea wrapped in desperation. She's counting on me. The weight of her trust, of Myra's faith, of Torin's grim resolve, it was a mantle he'd never wanted but could no longer shed. I'm not the man I was. The archivist who'd hidden in books was gone, burned away by the unseen's fire. He took a step toward the monolith, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. You want the drive? Take it, the lie was a gamble, a spark thrown into dry tinder. He raised the drive, his hand trembling, and the figure hesitated, their device wavering. They're human, not a machine. In that moment, Elias saw the crack in their armor, a flicker of the person they'd been before betrayal claimed them. The visor tilted, and the voice softened, almost mournful. You don't understand, Elias. The unseen will destroy everything. The council's order is all that holds Virith together. The words were a confession, raw and jagged, and Elias's heart lurched. Kale. The name hit like a thunderbolt. Kale, the quiet Vale operative who'd shared stories of the surface, who'd laughed with him over stolen rations. How could you? You're wrong, Elias said, his voice a blade of its own. The council's order is a cage. The unseen's a chance, a truth we've been denied. His words were a revelation, crystallizing the belief he'd only half embraced. I'm not just fighting for me anymore. He glanced at the monolith, its pulse a call to arms. This is for all of us. Kale's device hummed louder, but their hands shook. You're a fool, Varn. You'll burn the world. Then let it burn, Elias snapped, and lunged. Not at Kale, but at the monolith. His free hand slammed against its surface, the spiral symbol flaring under his touch. A shockwave rippled through the cavern, the air crackling with unseen energy. Lyra gasped, her pistol dropping as she shielded her eyes. Kale staggered, their device sparking, its light faltering. It's working. The Echelon protocol sequence, embedded in the drive, was syncing with the node, the unseen signal surging to life. But Kale wasn't done. They tore off their visor, revealing a face twisted with anguish and resolve. You've doomed us, Kale snarled, and raised a blade, its edge glinting like a promise of oblivion. Elias froze, the monolith's heat searing his hand. I can't fight him. But he didn't have to. Lyra tackled Kale, her small frame a blur of rage, the two crashing to the ground in a tangle of limbs and steel. Elias, finish it, Lyra screamed, grappling for the blade. Her voice was a lifeline, pulling him back from the edge. He shoved the drive into a port on the monolith, its interface glowing as the sequence uploaded. The cavern shook, dust raining from the ceiling, the unseen's pulse now a roar. This is it. His mind raced, memories of Myra's trust, torn scars, the archive's secrets, all converging in this moment. I'm enough. The monolith flared, a cascade of light flooding the chamber. Kale's scream was drowned by the signal's crescendo, their bodies slumping as the device shorted out. Lyra scrambled to her feet, blood trickling from a cut on her cheek, her eyes wide with awe. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. But the victory was hollow. The signal's surge had alerted the council, and Elias could feel their wrath closing in. We're not safe yet. He pulled the drive free, its surface warm, and turned to Lyra. We need to find the others. Mira, Torin, they're out there. Lyra nodded, her face grim. If they're still alive. The words were a knife, but Elias refused to bleed. They have to be. He led the way out, the monolith's light fading behind them. The tunnels were a blur, his legs burning, his thoughts a storm of hope and dread. The unseen was awake, its signal rippling through Viritha's underbelly, but what it would unleash, freedom or chaos, was a question he couldn't answer. They emerged into a ruined plaza, the old quarter's skyline jagged against a sky bruised with dawn. Mira and Torin were there, battered but alive, their faces lighting with relief as they saw Elias. Mira ran to him, her arms crushing him in a hug that said more than words ever could. You're okay, she breathed, her voice thick with unshed tears. She's my anchor. But the shadow of Kale's betrayal lingered, a wound that would scar. Torin's gaze was steel, but pride flickered in it. The signal's live. The council's scrambling. You've given us a chance, Varn. Elias nodded, exhaustion crashing over him. A chance. But at what cost? Kale's body lay somewhere in the cavern, a friend turned foe, a mirror of the choices Elias might yet face. He looked at Mira, at Lyra, at Torin, their faces etched with the same question, what now? The plaza was quiet, the city's hum distant. Elias's hand brushed the drive, its weight lighter now, a relic of the battle won. I'm not the man I was. Virith would never be the same, its secrets laid bare by the unseen's pulse. He stepped forward, the dawn's light catching his eyes, and spoke, his voice a vow. We keep fighting. For the truth. For us. Myra's hand found his, her grip fierce. Together. The horizon glowed, a new world whispering of hope and peril. Elias Varn, once an archivist, now a spark, stood ready to face it, the unseen's echo a song in his soul.